of IIT. So just here we will get their experience in the various parts of the world and including Pacific. So please.
Good afternoon, everybody. Since we're not actually as familiar faces as the previous two presenters to all of you, I wanted to take just a second to introduce ourselves. So I am Professor Laura Hossman from the Illinois Institute of Technology in Chicago, and this is Bruce Baikie, who's Senior Director of Broadband Initiatives at Invenio. He wears another hat running a social enterprise called Green Wi-Fi, also in San Francisco. And we're so pleased and grateful to be here to present to you today. What we're presenting about is a case study, if you will, or a specific deployment. So I'm actually very grateful to the presenters who went before us this morning, because we got to hear about some of the challenges, and even in the mHealth presentation, for example, you know, many of those challenges are absolutely relevant here in what we're going to be talking about. And also in Ian's presentation on education, of course, many of the points that he raised are very relevant here. So that actually allows us to launch into the telling the story of the deployment. So I'm grateful for that. I want to take an overview and tell you the whole story about this deployment. Starting at the very beginning of this, Bruce and I have actually been working together as an academic and a practitioner for about 4 years on various projects around the world, including in Senegal and in Haiti, and they have been technology and education projects, and mainly solar powering computers in the schools. We've learned a lot over these last 4 years, and we feel that the Pisces project is the best that we've done yet. There's still much to learn, of course, but we've learned from what we've experienced elsewhere and tried to bring all of the lessons learned into this new project that we are carrying out. We had independently, or actually somewhat together, been working on 2 projects that you see up in the upper right corner. The rendering, the drawing, up in the upper right corner is called a solar computer lab in a box that I had been working on with my students at Illinois Institute of Technology. Bruce has been mentoring my students for the last 4 years. And that grew out of our Haiti project. Bruce, for about the same number of years, has been working on a solar-powered Wi-Fi solution, which is the other white background picture that you see up there. And we brought those together. And in the spirit of this class that I was teaching, the entrepreneurship class, we pitched our idea to someone we met at a conference from Google, and we presented it to him as, here's this solar computer lab in a box that we can connect to solar-powered long-distance Wi-Fi. We gave him the details, and his reaction was the following: that is so cool. You know what would be even cooler? Is if you could deploy it at a remote island where they have no electricity, no infrastructure, and have never even heard of, let alone used, the internet. So Bruce and I looked at each other and we said, we can do that, no problem. Have you ever heard of Chuuk, Micronesia? And in fact, he had. He actually had a soft place in his heart for Micronesia. He had just recently traveled there. So, the long story short is, we got to do this project. Now, I'm probably preaching to the choir here because this is probably the audience who knows the Federated States of Micronesia better than any other audience I've ever presented to. But in any case, here's the slide where I ask, where is Chuuk? So it's one of the 4 Federated States of Micronesia. The one with the most islands, by the way. So the infrastructure is the most challenging of the 4 federated states. And what we proposed to do is to connect a remote island. In this case, Our island was 19 kilometers from the main capital city island of Waino, and our island is called Udat. So where is Udat? So the bigger island in the picture is Waino, the main island where the greatest number of people live. And Udat Island is what you see connected in this rendering that Bruce made to show the possibility for carrying out the long-distance Wi-Fi. It's about a 19-kilometer distance. After we were given the opportunity to submit a grant proposal to Google, Bruce and I brainstormed on what do we actually want to include in this project. And from what I had learned, from what we had learned in the past, the most important thing is local capacity building and training. Because if you bring technology somewhere where people don't know the technology inside and out and don't know what they can use it for to empower themselves, I kind of feel like you need to just forget about it. So, and I also happen to be an educator. So education is near and dear to my heart from the very beginning. So our project focuses on education at all levels of the project. Bruce's expertise in solar also brings us to focus on solar technology to power all of the technology involved in the project. But it's more than just Bruce's focus on solar. It's actually the fact that most of the rural areas that we're looking at don't have electricity. And they're probably never going to get grid electricity from their government, for example, if they don't already have it. So instead of looking at diesel generators, which are polluting and unsustainable and getting more and more expensive diesel gets, we're looking at solar, which is a one-time expense, more or less, and renewable and clean and can be used to teach children about keeping their environment clean, etc. The next big, huge lesson learned that we learned from, if I can even say, from failures, was the importance of partnerships. And these are not always a guaranteed green light, go ahead, going to work out perfectly. You can actually form the best partners possible, and things happen, as you know. So, for example, in another project that we worked on, one of our partners was a governmental partner, but the political winds of change shifted. And so beyond anyone's control, the Prime Minister made a decision that made our partner no longer exist. So you do your best in forming the partnerships, but nonetheless, again, back to the most important things, it's about local capacity building. So the partners have to be at least as many as possible have to be local. And then, of course, you want to focus on the skills building and the hands-on training so that when Bruce and I, for example, leave, the project goes on without us. That's actually one of the key denominators of success is when we leave, it goes on without us, that we're no longer necessary. We're making ourselves obsolete. However, before that happens, we also want to perform the role of being a catalytic agent. So forming the partnerships themselves, introducing the entrepreneur to the Ministry of Education, for example. They may not have spoken before, but our presence and carrying out this high-profile project may have the opportunity to introduce the two, which is actually exactly what happened on the ground. And so what is the Pisces project? We decided it would be two-parted. It would take place in two parts. So the first part, we carried out a hands-on training workshop at the University of Guam in the Northern Pacific. And the second part, we took some of the students that participated in that workshop with us to Chuuk, Micronesia, and carried out the in-field deployment. Bruce is going to go into a lot more detail about both of these aspects. So I just wanted to give you a quick overview in your head so that you can picture what we'll be talking about. And what were some of these lessons that we've learned are being applied, so from the past projects that we've worked on together. We want to use the new technology. Now, it's not all about technology, but technology plays a very important role here too. So given the expensiveness or unreliability or lack of energy, we want to go with ultra-efficient energy. We want to focus on the micro level, thus the all-in-one kits that I mentioned before, the solar computer lab in a box, the solar Wi-Fi all-in-one kit. One of the projects that we were working on in Haiti was a 2.4 kilowatt system that covered the roof of one of the primary schools, and that turned out not to be sustainable because the Ministry of Education decided to shift priorities. So if we went with the macro level, it turned out to be more risky than the micro level. We also wanted to try our best to make sure that the partnerships were going to be as properly incentivized as possible, to the extent that we had control over that. And then also to focus on the local capacity building and the training. And as I just mentioned, the extreme importance of partnerships. So I've already told you the background of pitching the idea to Google. But once we went to Google and we got the yes from them, after we fleshed out the entire project, we also applied for an Internet Society grant. So we're so honored to be able to present at this Internet Society conference, or partially sponsored Internet Society conference, and we were also partially sponsored by the Internet Society Community Grant, and also by the Pacific Telecommunications Council. So those are our funders, the last bullet point on there. I also feel it's very important to bring together partners from various different sectors, because when we're talking about ICT for development, we're talking about all kinds of different sectors. We're talking about the technology, we're talking about the human side of things. Someone needs to fund it, at least to help it get off the ground. We want private sector, we want public sector. We want diverse partners. And these diverse partners are not necessarily used to working together. So this is one of the great ways to bring together these partners and try to create synergies, introduce them to one another for the first time perhaps, and that's exactly what happened here. I want to introduce you to some of these partners up here. We have three, actually we have four universities up here. The University of California, Berkeley, we brought some students from there who had been working on various technological aspects of the project. The International Center for Theoretical Physics is ICTP up there. They sent professors who led the hands-on training program that you'll see at the University of Guam in just a few minutes. They also helped lead the hands-on portion in Chuuk. Illinois Institute of Technology is representing me, but I was also able to bring a student along. Actually, at the bottom we have Invinio and Green Wi-Fi. Bruce is representing those. Invinio is also carrying out, under their Broadband for Good initiative, looking to connect, as they say, those who need it most, rural areas. And then over to the right of the slide, we have iSolutions, which is our local partner from Chuuk, tech startup consulting company. I need to take a step back here actually and talk about the iSolutions. This whole project was actually initiated about 6 or 7 years ago by the founder of iSolutions talking with Bruce about how can we get a project going. So projects like this, even though we carried it out after pitching the idea in January of last year, getting the funding by May, and carrying out in August, it's a really fast timeline. But the idea actually took about 7 years. So these things do not happen overnight. Just want to take a little sidebar there and point that out. In addition, some other partners, the University of Guam, so we held the workshop on their campus, and they've continued to be a very active partner. The Federated States of Micronesia Department of Education, particularly because we carried out such a high-profile pilot project there, they've become more interested in continuing to be involved with this project. And finally, PREL, which perhaps is familiar to many of you in the room. The acronym stands for the Pacific Resources for Education and Learning. They work with primary and secondary schools across the Pacific. They're based in Honolulu, and they'll be working with our schools in Chuuk as well. So those were all of the partners partners. And yes, it was a lot of work to bring together these partners, and it continues to be a lot of work to keep them all in touch with one another. And we still have conference calls every 2 weeks since August to keep everyone up on the same page. And that's a part of the work that's really underestimated, I think, in terms of time commitment and energy, just the amount of work that it takes.
So my role in the project was also to bring together, from a technological standpoint, the expertise and how do we do that capacity building locally of that expertise. The last 5 years I've been a guest lecturer on solar energy for telecommunication networks at the International Center for Theoretical Physics. They hold a 3-month workshop for mainly students out of Africa to come and learn about low-cost telecommunications technology. And of course, as in Africa and other parts of the world, energy is an issue, and they've invited me to come in and guest lecture for a week on alternative power for these kind of networks. And so my thought was, it's hard for people from the Pacific to go and get this kind of education in Italy, but why can't we bring Italy to the Pacific? And so we put together this workshop and compressed that 3-month course down to 3 days so that we could get a flavor of it here. Because what I wanted to do was build that expertise both in low-cost telecommunications technology and solar energy locally. So we teamed with the University of Guam, and we put out this flyer and poster to invite students to participate in the workshop. Both students that were attending the University of Guam to industry practitioners within the Micronesian area. So we actually got students that traveled from Saipan. We also got some industry people, as well as other academics on the campus at the University of Guam. But once again, the goal was to teach the technical side of how to build out these networks and also maintain them. So we focused, we wanted both the lecture side, the theoretical side, and the practice side. And so we set up the workshop actually where we spent the mornings and first part of the afternoon on the theory, and then in the afternoons on hands-on experience. And we're fortunate on the university's campus, they had a couple buildings that didn't have internet access, or the access they had was really bad. And so we used that as our in-field class experience in what we learned in the class, and actually went and connected one of the campus buildings with solar-powered Wi-Fi to get internet connectivity to their building. And so it was a good hands-on experience. And in the middle you see one of the professors. Since we didn't do a session on safety and climbing, Ermanno that came from Italy, he actually did the climbing to install the one link on the tower, but on the top of the other building, all the students were able to participate to set up the Wi-Fi link and actually test it and see how it performed. And so that was, a pretty exciting end to the training, that they could actually do something hands-on. But of course, the next step was, now how do we take that, what we just learned, and apply it to the field? So this was the interesting part, because of course, when we arrived in Chuuk, things that we thought were not so. The internet site that we had originally planned for, we couldn't use. The distance and the obstacles between the two sites were different than what we had originally planned. But what was interesting when we started to put up this 12-meter mast on the school site is the community actually came out to help. And it was really interesting for me doing projects in Senegal and also in Haiti, where the community would stand around and look. The community here actually came and wanted to help, wanted to participate. It was a whole different experience than what I was used to.
I also made a visit. I wasn't so involved with the technical side, being a professor of political science, and I usually handle the one-on-one with teachers and administrators. And my first meeting at this school consisted of meeting with the vice principal, who also happened to be the 5th grade teacher, who also happened to be the one in whose classroom the solar computer lab in a box would go. And his first question to me was, can the community use this computer lab? And I put my hand on his shoulder and I said, oh yes, thank you so much. That's exactly what we want to hear. So we have a lot of confidence that the community will be using this.
So this was, the link on the island side. And of course, the difficult part was the original internet connection on the main island side didn't materialize. And we're fortunate the local owner of the hotel we were staying in offered space on his roof to put our other connection. And the building next door housed the Prowl office, and we got our internet connection from there. And so this is the solar-powered unit that was installed on the roof of the solar panel, the battery box, and the antenna. But once again, it was good practice for the students to actually see it happening. And if on the picture on the right, you can actually see the island UDOT in the background, and that was how far the link we did over water for this connection.
So I just wanted to show some pictures of this. This is the solar computer lab in a box that my students at IIT designed from the semester that was January through May. And this was the second prototype. So it's not quite commercially ready, if you will, but and we actually hosted a competition a few months ago to redesign the box, because once we got on site, again, as you know, everything changes once you get on site, and the box turned out to be far too heavy and a little bit too big as well. But as you can see, the main creative idea, if you will, was that the box itself transforms into the table that you see below. And we actually ran out of time during the semester to come up with our IKEA-style directions to transform the box into the table, and it turned out that they were completely unnecessary. The community showed up and they actually transformed it from the box to the table in less time than I had been able to do with the students during the entire semester of our rehearsing it for making videos. So they did it in about 10 minutes. They did the whole transformation. But the other unique parts about the computer lab in a box are that it's direct current only powered. All of your laptops out there power on direct current, and solar panels generate direct current. So we're skipping the inverter, we're skipping any extra external batteries, and we're just powering the computer's own indigenous, if you will, batteries. It's simplified down to the bare bones minimum. Solar panels, wiring, a charge controller, some more wiring, and well, some security measures. And that's about it. So our solar computer lab in a box. Sorry, this is also my slide. We were fortunate enough to be in Chuuk while the Department of Education was carrying out one of its 3 summer institutes for teacher training that they have. So we had access to talking to 400 primary and secondary level teachers while we were there. We couldn't have had better timing if we had tried. So we had the opportunity not only to present about our project to these 400 teachers, we also had the opportunity to have small not one-on-one, but groups of 20 to 40 groups of 20 to 40 teacher discussions where they would ask us questions and raise any concerns that they had, or etc., just to discuss the use of technology in the schools in the future. We also carried out a baseline survey of these 400 teachers regarding their attitudes towards technology use and technology use in the schools. Still the educational focus, it's still on me, all right. What I wanted to say here on the fact that it's focusing on education on all levels, we started out in the University of Guam focusing on university level students. So even though we had private sector participants, really the people involved had a university level education. Then we went to Chuuk and started talking with the teachers. We didn't actually provide teacher training in terms of the technology. That would certainly be something for the future, but we also feel very strongly that in this case, it needs to be the responsibility of the Ministry of Education to step up and say, you know what, if we're going to have computers in all of our schools, which is something that they want, and there is a plan of action for doing that, there needs to be teacher training, and it would need to also be the Ministry of Education that carries out such training. What I can also add is that teachers need support in this for years long. The process of change to adapting to using technology in pedagogy is a years-long process. So the great news is that the director of the Department of Education has expressed a great deal more interest in putting technology in the schools and asking for assistance from our local partners as a result of this project.
Well, 5 of the main principles that we use with any project, and I just want to share with you, is this concept of sustainable ICT, and we've heard a lot about that. And so as we look at any of these projects, the 5 things we really look at very hard are power, because there's just as all these laptops are in this room, there's probably none that run at 12 volts, or 24 volts, or 48 volts, and those are the voltage outputs of most solar systems, which means you have to put an inverter in. But if we pick the right kind of equipment, things that run at 12 or 24 volts, then we can power those with direct current. We also want to look at the power footprint. I mean, if we look at the average laptop in here, probably uses 70, 80 watts of power, where if you look at these new ultra low power but still high performance laptops, they use about 10 watts of power, meaning a solar system can power 10 of those for one of the laptops that you're sitting in front of. But then also price is a concern. We have to make sure that it's also something that's affordable. And also we need to look at the environmentals. Once again, most of the laptops that you have in here have a small fan on them to keep them cool. Well, the fan draws in dust, humidity, everything else, and you have to look at, well, how do you prevent equipment failure? And the work that I've done in Africa and in Haiti, as well as in the Pacific, we've seen too many things where both dust and humidity have caused things to fail, or even geckos crawling in and causing the fan to jam and it shorts out. But also equally important is a user interface that's for the type of user that the equipment's going to be used for. And then of course the last piece is the maintenance. How is it going to be supported and maintained? Is it easy to be supported and maintained? And are parts available? And a lot of people ask me, well, which one of these are the most important? Well, one isn't more important than the other. If you don't have a balance of all of these in your project, it's probably going to fail. You can have the best power solution, the best price point, and it can work in that environment, but if it doesn't have a user interface that they can use, if it doesn't have support and maintenance, it's going to fail.
So just to give some updates, since the deployment that we carried out in August, or that our team carried out in August, I alluded to this just a moment ago, but the executive director of the Chuk's Department of Education contacted the local partners to whom we had introduced her for assistance with making a statewide ICT in education plan of action. And as an academic, I can say this. There was a plan of action for the Federated States of Micronesia. There is, I should say, but it has been written by academics, not unlike myself. And there is, in my own opinion, quite a disconnect sometimes between academics who write reports, or others, consultants perhaps, who write reports, and those who need to carry them out. So I am here as a champion of partnering, working together, and possibly getting more of those of us who are academics and work in offices more out into the field, so that we can actually advise a little bit better when we give advice. As I mentioned also, the iSolutions consultant tech company recently signed an IT contract with the Department of Education, so they have now become on the radar of the Department of Education, and a little bit more than on the radar, actually. They'll be tasked with carrying out the IT functions and maintenance for the Department of Education. And before this, there actually wasn't an IT contract that existed. Perhaps there wasn't yet a need for it, or wasn't seen to be a need for it, but now there is, and it's our local partner that we feel we may have been a catalyst in introducing. PREL, the Pacific Resources for Education and Learning that I mentioned before, they'll start working with the school that we connected with their dual language arts program starting in January. So we're very excited about that because many of our team members cannot stay in Chuuk and be on the ground working with the teachers, and at the same time the Department of Education is not yet at the stage where they'll be carrying out teacher training. So the fact that PREL will be carrying out teacher training as a part of this dual language arts program, and this dual language arts program has been piloted in 3 schools across Chuuk, but only 3 because those were the only 3 schools that had internet connectivity and computers. So this school that we just connected in Udat made the 4th school, so they will now be participating in this dual language arts program project. We've also applied for multiple grant proposals since August to expand the program, and it's exciting for us to note that not only would these new grants be carried out or led by locals, but some of them are even actually locally based, the funding. And finally, just the moral of the story, I guess, is that the people within Chuuk, the partners and the actors that I just mentioned, have really taken notice of this high-profile project, and they're becoming actively involved, and even to the point of funding.
So looking forward to what's next, so the good news is what Laura has said. In Chuuk, they're actually funding locally, and local involvement is carrying on that project. What was interesting from our standpoint is our project funders, one of them came back to us and said, we really liked what had happened in the North Pacific, but can it be duplicated in the South Pacific? So, we're excited that this conference was taking place because it also gave us the opportunity to start discussions here at the university to do a similar training this July and August for local capacity building, but also allowed us to visit Vanuatu as well as some sites within Fiji for possible project to duplicate what had been done in Chuuk, and also talk about some partnerships with local entities that could help support that. So we're looking forward to replicating this type of project in the South Pacific and moving forward. In fact, yesterday we missed our afternoon session here because we went out to the island of Bangor. Is that pronounced right? To visit some schools there that, of course, don't have electricity, but a lot of students that would benefit from a computer lab and connection to the internet.
Thank you.